fear is ruining your life. I'm gonna prove that to you today. Better yet, I'm gonna help you fix it. Give me 4 or 5 minutes, I'll show you what fear is doing to you and how to overcome it. Because chances are, if you're watching this channel, I've attracted a relatively successful cohort of people, which is awesome. But the problem with people who are relatively successful is they always know they can achieve more. And part of wanting to achieve more is overcoming the fear that keeps you where you are. So stick with me, I'm gonna show you how to break through that barrier of fear once and for all, and finally start living the life that you know you're capable of living. Because realistically, for most people, the difference between where they are and where they want to be is a barrier of fear. So we're going to deconstruct that barrier today. I want to start by saying some of you might not even know that fear is what's holding you back. So I want to give you a quick little exercise to do. It's practical. I know you love practical exercises that can illustrate just how much fear is blocking you off from the life you really want to live. I want to introduce you to an idea called the arch nemesis technique. I'm going to break this down really simply. As people, we respond best to competition. We're a competitive species. We're a social species, therefore we're competitive. We try a lot harder when we're against somebody else. If we're just running our own race, we're often not as motivated because we don't have anyone to beat. We're not worried about someone else beating us. But the problem with competition, especially in the modern world, is it's not a level playing field. You can't compare yourself to me because I have advantages you don't. You also have advantages I don't. It's not a level playing field. And we don't know the advantages and disadvantages of each other. The only level playing field you can create is by competing with yourself. So this brings us to the arch nemesis technique. What I want you to do, and it's going to be a bit of an exercise, but I promise you it's worth it in the long run. I want you to imagine yourself, but the absolute best version of yourself in every regard. I'll use myself as an example to keep the fire off you, but repeat this exercise with yourself. Let's say I want to make more money. The ideal version of myself makes this much money, but I only make this much money. So I'm gonna take a bit of paper, I'm gonna write down how much money this guy made. Let's say the ideal version of me wakes up at 5 a.m. every day, but I only wake up at 6. So I'm gonna write down, wakes up at 5 a.m. every day. I'm gonna go through every aspect of life, every aspect of their character, all the times they beat me, all the times they have ideals that I'm not yet at. I'm gonna list that in a big bit of paper. Once you have that big bit of paper, and believe me, it should be long, it should be 20, 30 points long, of what this ideal version of yourself looks like, you now have someone to compete with that's on a completely level playing field to you. They've had the exact same experiences, they have the exact same advantages, disadvantages. They've had everything you've had, but unlike you, they've made the most of every circumstance. Congratulations, we've just unlocked unlimited motivation for you. If ever you feel like slacking off, not doing your best, not putting yourself out there, you now have this ideal of what you could be if you put yourself out there. So how does this link to fear? If you look at this list, there are going to be some things that are purely logistics or purely mindset based. But if you look at it intently and try and figure out the reason why you're not doing some of these things already, you'll notice a lot of those reasons come from fear. I'll give you another example for me. One of the businesses I run involves cold calling clients. And when I first started that business, I had a lot of trouble actually getting on the phone. I had a lot of fear around that action. My ideal self had no fear. He'd call 20, 30, 40 clients a day. So the clear barrier between where I was and where I wanted to be was fear. And you notice this for a lot of things. Let's say talking to girls, you might want to, every time you see a pretty girl, you might want to go and introduce yourself. What's the thing that stops you? Fear. Fear of judgment, fear of embarrassing yourself, fear of rejection. That F word is everywhere. It's the limit between your life now and the life you could live. So now you have these ideals, right? And if you live like this, you think your life would be pretty damn good. Let's go about getting rid of the fear that blocks you getting there. There are 2 methods I have, both equally as effective as each other. The first one we're going to discuss comes from a psychological theory called exposure therapy. Basically, it states that the more you're exposed to something, the less you're going to fear it. Now, I know it sounds like a cop-out answer. I'm saying do more of the thing you're afraid of, but you don't have to do it that intensely. See, in exposure theory, the example they always use is someone who's afraid of elevators. You probably heard Jordan Peterson talk about it, other psychologists. They always use this example because it's extreme, but it captures the essence. So let's say someone's really afraid of elevators. The first thing you get them to do to get over that fear is not go and ride an elevator. First thing you do is maybe draw them a picture of an elevator. Everyone can look at a drawn picture of an elevator. Next, you might show them a video of a real elevator. A little bit scarier, but they're still very safe. They don't feel that nervous. They're not going to be afraid of a video. Next, they might go and look in an elevator. Okay, slowly building up a little bit. Then they'll walk closer to the elevator. Even closer, then eventually they're in the elevator. And they only got there because they approached it in a stepwise fashion. They gradually exposed themselves to the things they fear. Let's take the cold calling example from before. How did I get over that fear? I gradually exposed myself. So I didn't try and jump to 30, 40 calls a day straight away, because that's too much. I was terrified of that. Instead, I tell myself I just need to make 1 call today. 1 call. And all I have to do is dial the number. It doesn't matter what they say, doesn't matter what I say. All I have to do is press dial. That's it. Most people can dial a number and press dial. Most people can dial a number and press call, you know, with no expected outcome as to what's gonna happen from the call. The next day, I'd make that 2, and then I'd make it 5, and then I'd make it 10, gradually building it up until the 30 to 40 doesn't seem so scary. And the interesting thing about exposure therapy is it doesn't get less scary because the object itself hasn't changed. Look at the elevator. The elevator was still an elevator the whole time. What happened is the individual got braver. Cold calling was still cold calling, but I became braver. I did more. It's the same with any kind of fear. Talking to women, for example. It might seem pretty scary to go out to a bar and try and flirt with women, but is it scary to say hi or thank you to the woman who works at the cafe? Much less so. So that's a very easy way to slowly dismantle your fear. The key thing to look for is progress. As long as you're making progress, you're headed in the right direction. So let's recap. You've got this big list of ideals of what you want to reach, and you've identified that fear is in the way of a lot of them. And in order to get over this fear, you're going to gradually expose yourself to the things that make you afraid. And as a result, you're going to become braver and slowly get over those fears and get closer and closer to this ideal. That alone is going to improve your life an insurmountable amount. Insurmountable? It's going to improve your life a lot. Okay, you're going to look back on this and be like, damn, I'm glad I watched those 4 to 5 minutes of that video. You're welcome. But there are some circumstances where you can skip the queue, where you can go from 0 to 100 straight away if you're feeling ballsy, and I've got a strategy for that. This strategy, and it's part 2 of overcoming your fears, I actually took from Steve-O from Jackass. Steve-O, I know. I saw an interview with Steve-O once, and Steve-O appears to be the man with no fear. He does all these stunts, he jumps off buildings, objectively does kind of dumb stuff, but he does it with seemingly no sense of fear. And I saw an interview with Steve-O, and someone asked him about this, and he actually broke it down. He said, I do feel fear before I do these things, but I have a technique that allows me to overcome any fear. And they said, well, what is it? He says he counts down from 3, and he has a pact with himself that when he gets to 1, he has to do it, whatever it is. It's an unbreakable bond. It's a pact that no matter what, if I start counting down from 3, by the time I get to 1, I've done what I was gonna do. So for him, that's things like jumping through a ring of fire. He does weird shit. So for him, it's more physical stunts. But this works for everything. Let's say you wanna go and talk to a pretty girl, and it's a rare opportunity. You're feeling a bit ballsy, you think maybe I could skip a few gradual steps here and go straight for the talk. Count down from 3, make a pact with yourself that by the time you get to 1, you've done it. It's often the case that in these scenarios, your legs have to carry your head. What do I mean by that? You can't think your way into doing things. The longer you think, the worse the fear becomes. That's why the countdown is so powerful. You give yourself 3 seconds to think, that's it. And by the time you start the countdown, you know you're gonna get to the end, and you know you've got to do it by the end. Otherwise, you've broken a pact with yourself. If you can be really strict with this and really stick to it, you've just unlocked unlimited bravery. Fear is gone now. Rather, let me reframe that. Fear is still there, but you acknowledge it, you count down, you do it anyway. And you can use this at a big or a small scale. Let's say you're trying to work things up gradually, like step 1, but it's proving a bit too intimidating. It's proving a little bit too scary. In that case, you're gonna use the countdown, and you've made a pact with yourself. You wanna get better, you wanna reach these ideals. 3, 2, 1, I've got to do it. Over you go. Your legs will carry you there. Let your legs carry you there before your brain has time to realize what's going on. Because your brain's job is to plan out every possible scenario and to focus on the potentially negative one. Why? Self-preservation. It's biological. Our brain's job is to keep us alive, right? If you rewind hundreds of thousands of years, we were in caves facing real danger, right? Our brain's job was to plot out that danger and keep us safe. As a result, we're very risk averse. We listen to fear. We treat fear with respect. These days, not many things that you fear are actually going to harm you. That's why we've got to use little techniques and exposure therapy to get over it. Because a lot of fear is not real. Fear is just standing in the way of who you could be. So what are you going to do? You're going to make a list of ideals. Your absolute ideal self. You, but the best version. And it's probably going to piss you off a little bit, but that's good. Being pissed off is motivation. So you have this list of ideals, and you're gonna gradually take yourself from where you are to this list of ideals. 2 ways: exposure therapy, exposing yourself a little bit to what you want over here. Little by little, you edge closer. And the second way, using a countdown. If it's too hard to edge any closer, force yourself to edge closer. Countdown, 3, 2, 1. The good thing about the countdown is if you're feeling ballsy and you really stick to your word, that's the important part here, sticking to your word, you can jump a few steps. You can put yourself really out of your comfort zone and make a lot of progress really quickly. Follow these steps. Stop letting fear control your life, man. The sooner you realize this sort of dawned on me when I was about 24, 25, that I'd let fear rule my life. And as a result, I wasn't where I wanted to be. And why? Made up thoughts up here. The sooner you realize that, the sooner you can work to overcome it, and the sooner you can become the best version of yourself. Bit of a motivational video for you today. I'm just sick of seeing people held back by fear. You know, it sucks. You only get one life. You may as well push for the absolute best one you can. So I hope you got a little bit of value. If you did, feel free to subscribe. I'll make another video tomorrow. I'll see you then.